Sup you beautiful people? Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Was Trained by Saitama. An alternate universe where Izuku isn't trained by the one with one for all, but an old bald man who only needed one punch for all the enemies he had ever encountered. Know this, the strongest hero isn't necessarily the strongest man. The farther you get from the people you want to save, the harder it is to save their spirits. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. A hero is what any young child would dream of becoming. A shared dream. An everlasting dream. A dream everyone dreams about, but for many that dream is lost when they become an adult. Every second spent idle is a lost opportunity. Though everyone is born with great potential, every second that passes that potential is diminished, until the time of death. In a world where almost everyone was super, young 12-year-old Izuku was the wrong type of special, for he was unbearably normal save for his characteristic seaweed hair and freckles. As a quirkless one, he couldn't breathe fire or move objects with his mind. Even so, he wanted to be a hero, an almighty hero, but reality isn't kind to those with such ambitions. Still in grade school I see. Violating the dress code. Kaken. Don't try to push it on someone who will become someone someday. Sorry. Trying to jerk me round? No sir. With his uniform burned in a few places left behind by a certain narcissistic ticking bomb as he walked home with unsavory thoughts. I don't fit in. I don't know how to live. I'm a loser. How can I become a hero if I'm so weak? As he was walking, he walked past a group of hooligans surrounding an old bald homeless man with an outgrown white beard. How dare you touch the boss's sweet chocolate pompadour? I wanted to be the one to eat. Smack. The horse-faced man tried to correct himself in front of the one with the odd hairstyle and picked up the old bald man by the collar of his dirty yellow jumpsuit. But at this moment Izuku succumbed to his nature. He couldn't overlook the old man's lifeless eyes that seemed to give up on everything and picked up his book bag. Thump. Izuku's book bag did absolutely nothing. I really am a good for nothing, aren't I? The group of hooligans descended on the young boy without a hint of mercy, and the young boy fought with everything he had. Stepping on toes, aiming for the eyes, but it wasn't enough. He was too human while his opponents were something more. The man with the uncharacteristically large right arm grabbed onto his from behind, putting him in a lock. Snap! The young boy's arm was dislocated and tears were streaming from his eyes, yet he did not make a sound, biting onto his lower lip trying to overcome the pain. People shouldn't be picking on retired heroes. That old man was a hero. In their confusion, Izuku collected his thoughts. As the centaur man prepared his hind legs, Izuku prepared to duck. They don't realize how much shorter I am? Thud. The one holding him back was knocked out cold. High on the pain, steadying his 2 feet and clenching his remaining fist, Izuku donned the persona of victory of his daily tormentor. Still got my left arm. I can still go. The fire in young boy's eyes was not lost on the seemingly lifeless old man lying next to the wall. Like looking into an old mirror. I was once a boy like that too, wasn't I? Thus a spark reignited the flame. When Izuku regained consciousness, he saw an unbelievable scene. A billowing white cape and the shining reflection of the sun above it blinding his vision. The image was burned into his memory. Young Izuku had seen All Might's triumphant form in videos before, but never had he seen a hero up close before. As he turned his head, he saw what became of those he was fighting against. All of them unconscious, cradled in their individual craters. A hand reached out and the scene was ruined. Snap! Gah! The pain of having his dislocated arm being put back in place put him back into reality. The plain apologetic figure of an old bald and bearded man bowing to him wasn't very imposing or impressive. Sorry. I thought an aspiring hero like you was a little sturdier. Hero? I'm just some middle school student. I don't even have a quirk. Reminiscing with his hand on his chin, old Saitama could only answer with a snide look. You really haven't seen some of the heroes I knew. As the young injured Izuku was picked up and carried on the old man's surprisingly strong back, he couldn't help but ask, Can I really become a hero? Izuku had no expectations, but the old man's response were words he didn't know he had always wanted to hear. You're already a hero, aren't you? The happiest moment of his life was a short-lived one. Though he was elated, Izuku's pessimism overtook him. Is he really a hero? Despite his costume, Izuku could not recall a single hero that fit the old man's description, and Izuku knew his heroes. He simply assumed the man to be retired one from his costume despite how plain and unimpressive. Can someone born without a quirk really become a hero? Quirk? Back in my day, almost all of us had to work for our power. Quirk wasn't even in the dictionary yet. How old are you? But Izuku had enough self-control to not question the old man. Then how did you beat those thugs? The tone of the air shifted, the old man's pace halted to a stop. Uncharacteristic enthusiasm boomed out of the old man's mouth. 100 push UPS. 100 sit UPS. 100 squats. 10 kilometers running. Every single day. It sounded so normal that it was absurd, yet it made sense. Izuku was skeptical, but the old man's words gave him hope, and in times of desperation, people seek the light however small. Who decides limits? What are they based on? Izuku had barely worked toward his dream. Reminiscing on today, with tears in his eyes and mucus in his nose, the only thought on his mind was, I'm such an idiot! The me today was already stronger than the me yesterday. Instead of giving in, move forward. The power of humans is that they can change themselves. Change myself? Of course. At first, you'll wish you were dead, but to be a strong hero I never took a day off even as my arms started making strange noises. Nothing is easy. Anything gained comes at a cost. Without giving up something in return, I really should write this down. Great, I left my notebook back there. The most important thing is no AC in the summer and no heat in the winter to strengthen your mind. That's a hard sell to Mom. Wait, isn't that just a money-saving suggestion? Before he knew it, Izuku was home and his mother was in tears. Thank you for saving my son. Kid's gonna be a great hero someday. In the many years of no one believing in her son, not even herself, her next words were only natural. Thank you, you don't know how much those words mean to him. Before he even realized it, Saitama had become his personal live-in fitness trainer for the price of shelter and 3 square meals a day. Is he just taking advantage of us? Those were thoughts he couldn't help but think, but he stomped down hard on those thoughts. To become a strong hero, he would endure anything. The first few months were torture and his body never really got used to it. 4 more km to go. Izuku remembered Kaken's words. DKU! 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 That homeless man is just a fraud. Despite that, he kept on training. Old Saitama-sensei, despite his age, was training alongside him without showing the slightest sign of discomfort on his face, so it was only natural Izuku had to keep going even as his joints were making creaking strange noises. The lack of AC in summer or heat in winter turned out to be something more than just a topping to the hardship he was eating. He felt sorry for his mom, but with a smile on her face, she endured that part of the training together with him. He couldn't imagine the torture that was turning on the stove in summer or opening the fridge in winter. Faster, stronger, better. Month by month, the time required to complete the entire workout decreased minute by minute. Just 3 more push-ups. During some of their daily runs they would run into various scenarios. Is that a speed quirk? That was the only way onlookers could rationalize the pair in green tracksuits. The pair body a purse snatcher with a normal tackle. Chasing down that purse snatcher and tackling him was cathartic, but victory was short-lived as Saitama-sensei's figure disappeared from view. Just 2 more sit-ups. On the news, All Might's exploits were being investigated. Yesterday, near Oridara Junior High School, notorious kidnappers who were targeting middle schoolers were apprehended. The suspects sustained critical injuries and cannot be questioned at this time, but judging from the type of damage, experts are certain it was All Might. Gah! If I didn't crash into that van yesterday, I could have gotten All Might's autograph. Focus, just 1 more squat. Eventually, what had taken hours, Izuku could complete under half of one. The quirkless boy had undergone a metamorphosis. After 2 years of training, Bakugo noticed something different about the quirkless boy. DKU, you have bald spots. Was that an apology? Considering the nature of Bakugo's power, it wouldn't be surprising if Izuku lost some of his hair from their daily squabbles. Moron. You shouldn't have listened to that fraud. Your health is failing. Many would have taken it as an insult, but not our young quirkless hero. I feel fine. Come on. Let's go. I'll show you that your training was useless. I don't like how you're talking about Saitama-sensei. In the schoolyard, the two boys stood opposite each other readying their stances. Even though the time bomb never acknowledged anyone, he always took everything seriously, maybe too seriously. It was that serious nature of his that made him see even kindness as a slight. DKU! The time bomb was the one that went off first. Kaken's signature right. Not wanting to hurt the boy he perceived as his friend against common sense, Izuku sidestepped. So slow, was the only thought as Izuku followed up with pulling on Bakugo's sleeve in order to make him lose balance. Ha! The result in reality was different than what Izuku had in mind. Instead of losing balance, Bakugo was sent hurtling in the air, spinning around like a propeller. Despite this setback, Bakugo followed up using the spin to his advantage, preparing himself for his signature attack by building up his momentum with the explosions created from his nitroglycerin-soaked palms. Kaken is so cool, was Izuku's only thought. With stars in his eyes, he had totally forgotten that they were supposed to be fighting. Howitzer impact. Bakugo's attack never connected as he found Izuku behind him pulling him by the collar. He was nearly choked to death by his own momentum. Gah! Bakugo tried one last desperate swipe, before a palm was planted into his stomach. Gentle push. Bakugo was made to see stars in a slightly different manner after careening through several walls of the school. Are you alright? When a teacher was coming in to check up on the scene, Izuku against his own morality ran away. Bakugo would never acknowledge the fight and attribute it to some bad dream, while the school would attribute the incident to some serial vigilante. They never suspected the quirkless Izuku was behind the incident. On the edge of a certain beach littered in trash, Izuku couldn't help but criticize himself for today's incident in front of his sensei, who naturally wasn't listening a bit. Genos. I really am a coward. Why did I run away? Too many words. 10 words or less. Forcing back the tears, Izuku forced himself into composure. I pushed my friend through a wall by accident. Maybe you should take a break from training? But I want to be the strongest hero. There is such thing as too strong. But, know this, the strongest hero isn't necessarily the strongest man. The farther you get from the people you want to save, the harder it is to save their spirits. I learned that the hard way. At times, Saitama would get serious with his speech and Izuku couldn't help but write it down, but once again, tragedy struck. Clutching his head, he exclaimed, "Ah! Forgot my notebook at school! Forget it. Let's see your progress. Throw your strongest punch into that ocean." My strongest? Understood. Izuku got into his stance, with his left hand covering his right fist just like he had seen some heroes do in the videos he watched in his childhood. He threw what he thought was his strongest punch. Serious smash. His fist broke the sound barrier, creating an audible crack. The shockwave generated by his fist parted the waters of the ocean. The waters reached up to the sky as if to tie heaven and earth together, but the waters could not escape the pull of gravity. Somewhere out there, a weatherman was cursing an irresponsible quirk user. Both student and master were flabbergasted with the artificial downpour soaking their clothes, though for different reasons. This is my power! Izuku was overcome with gratification. Not even the rain could hide his tears. It seemed even without a quirk, he was getting ever so closer to becoming a great hero like All Might or Saitama-sensei. Saitama was on the ground, clutching on a tuft of hair. Your hair! You're already getting bald. Saitama was overcome with regret. Bald spots were already appearing in several places. Izuku wasn't even paying attention to his master's words anymore, simply putting his knees on the ground, performing a series of serious dijiza. Thank you. The weatherman would once again curse another quirk user for causing unaccounted for quakes. Trying to calm his disciple down, and trying to dodge the issue of his disciple's receding hairline, he tried coming with generic words of wisdom. Trying to appear as sincere as possible, he reached for the ham within him. Hold your head high, Genos. Unlike others born with their power, you have won it through your hard work and determination. Overcome with joy, Izuku didn't even notice that his master said someone else's name. Yes, Saitama-sensei. Saitama could not bring himself to admit the truth. Your strongest is still kinda lacking, but I guess it will have to do. Every night, Katsuki Bakugo was haunted by a certain memory, but he would always deny it as a dream. Stronger, faster, better, in comparison to him. All adjectives he would never ascribe to who he had perceived as a quirk less good for nothing. Even though he would never acknowledge that certain memory, he could not help but face the new reality that Izuku had become strong. In fact, it was infuriating. The good-for-nothing barely registered his presence anymore, which was a great departure from the memories in his childhood. Despite the huge uproar in class about Izuku's desire to enter UA, there was no particular reaction to him. Just staring a little too intently in his notebook and mumbling to himself, which had become his usual routine. I still have things to settle with you, Deku. Bakugo had attempted to pry a certain notebook that Izuku had been scribbling in all day that obviously had nothing to do with the lessons they took that day. But to his surprise, Izuku's grip was stronger than usual. Quite the resistance for someone nicknamed Wooden Puppet. Puppets were powerless things that couldn't do anything, but right now, Deku was defying the natural laws of the world. In the next instant, Izuku was simply gone. The floor ruined with skid marks. The only thought on Izuku's mind as he bolted out the door was, time for my 10 kilometers run. Feels weird not to do the entire workout anymore, but Saitama-sensei knows best, I think. It was also in this odd reality that a certain comment deprived All Might of what he needed when he visited the supermarket during a special sale on vegetables. During the same moment, a certain Kate Baldy was thinking hard of some wise words for his disciple. Cough cough. A hero shouldn't overlook his dental health. Cavities and bleeding gums can be a hero's greatest enemy while he's on duty. Scribble, scribble. Thus All Might did not buy bottled soft drinks, but opted for bottled water instead. Though perceived by many as a better option, everyone knows that the reverse is true when it comes to the bottles themselves. A mere disposable water bottle simply couldn't contain sentient sludge the same way a soda bottle could. Bakugo was trying desperately to rid himself of the sludge that was covering his clothes, but all his attempts were in vain. He was drowning. His power had served no purpose other than to further entice the sentient sludge who desired to get stronger by eating him. In what he thought would be his last moments, sequential semi-smashes, and then it started to rain mud. In the distance, he saw a quickly disappearing figure. Disappearing, appearing, disappearing again. That good-for-nothing better not be messing with me. Nearly a year later, after a certain incident with a mud villain, it was time for UA High's entrance exam. The entrance exam for aspiring heroes in which Izuku took part in was not memorable, but the aftermath would be burned in their memory. The written portion wasn't memorable, but at least some students could piece together some specifics. The practical portion just started and ended almost in a single moment. Start. The test takers bolted to the test area, but when they got there, there was nothing left of the test they could see. All they could gather in their vision were broken miscellaneous parts of what were once thought to be training robots, and all they could hear in the distance was someone screaming, serious sequential serious smashes, before their ears were assaulted with a series of sonic booms. Boom, 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 boom. The fidgeting force of nature made no distinction, simply smashing anything that so much as moved. Big or small. Worth a lot, or very little. Not even the 0-point gimmicks were spared. One could only imagine the tragedy if the other test takers were only slightly faster. It was a shame that Saitama had never taught him how to control his strength under pressure. The day after the test was just like a bad hangover. That is to say, everyone except the Kate Baldy's disciple had failed the practical, including the practical itself, without even really knowing what happened. It was supposed to test a young hero's judgment, agility, insight, and fighting prowess, but for young Izuku, it may have only gauged at best 2 of those things. Despite clearly lacking in judgment and insight as he smashed everything indiscriminately, the one in charge of the school budget convinced everyone else to pass him, because they only had so much money to spend on disposable robots. They had to save some for the rest of the students for the retest the next day. As young Izuku did not show up to the retest, everyone at UA High just assumed he dropped out, until they saw he had his seat. It wasn't until they witnessed his performance in Aizawa's apprehension test that they saw the difference between him and them. With the threat of expulsion of the worst performing student, Izuku could only take Aizawa's test seriously. Trial 1, 50-meter dash. Just like my daily 10 kilometers run. Serious series, serious sprinting, asterisk sonic boom asterisk. Someone find that kid. What part of 50m did he not understand? Trial 2, grip strength test. Kid, equipment doesn't come cheap. We can't spend the entire school budget on just you. Sorry. Trial 3, long jump, serious series, serious spring step. We need to find that kid again. Trial 4, sustained sideways jumps, serious series, serious side steps. This trial isn't about how well you can abuse the floor. Trial 5, the pitch, serious series, serious shuto, asterisk boom asterisk. So, tongue twisters are your quirk's trigger? Sure. Did he figure out I just do it because I think it's cool? With his constant use of tongue twisters for attack names, everyone could piece together the fact that the boy whose nickname meant good for nothing was the good for nothing who made everyone retake the test. So naturally, his high school life at UA wasn't shaping up to be much different than his time at middle school. In a sense, weak or strong, nothing had changed for the quirky quirkless boy, but it would get worse in the 2 versus 2 indoor battle trial. Though the hero costume his mother prepared for him wasn't too impressive and made him look like some weird rabbit thing, he donned it proudly anyway to respond to the feelings sewn into the cloth. He had finally become strong enough so his mother no longer needed to worry. He was confident and he was smiling, but unfortunately, the day would not end in smiles. Saitama-sensei must have been the same way once. That was the thought that reassured him about his plain-looking costume even as he was surrounded by spiteful stares all round. To all the other students, he was an anomaly. His strength was the inverse of his image. If things were different, others may have found him endearing, but under the current circumstances, no one could forgive him. Indoor battle, Izuku and Uraraka, Zero Gravity, versus Ida, Engine, and Bakugo, Explosion. The trial was simple to understand for anyone that had played a variation of Counter-Strike. Izuku with the role of hero simply had to defuse the bomb before a time limit, while his enemies in the role of villains tried to stop him. With the power he had, the victory condition was simple. The bomb was on the top floor, he was on the bottom. Serious smash. Smash through the ceilings and aim for the top. Not a terribly bad idea, since debris could fuel his partner's power. Her zero gravity could also be used to bring them to the top floor, but it dawned on him he could do things faster if he simply just jumped up, so he did, leaving her behind. Ida had an inkling of the things Izuku could do, but it was pointless. Urikara's power had limitations. There were certain conditions that made it weak or strong, but Ida couldn't think of a weakness to Izuku's pure power. The best and most versatile abilities are the simplest with no obvious weaknesses. That was partly why All Might was considered the greatest hero by so many. It was for this reason Ida couldn't think of a way to win. His specialty was speed, but he was outclassed in simply everything, so all he could do was rely on instinct. After regaining composure after the all too familiar noise, Izuku was already next to the bomb, yet the match wasn't over. Izuku was simply standing next to it. Victory was literally in his grasp, but it was too easy, it didn't feel right. It feels like I'm cheating. He couldn't accept such an easy victory, and he was sure no one would be happy losing in such a way. His enemies were simply at his mercy. They were helpless and Ida was despairing. He was someone who always had faith in rules, but this time, rules had betrayed him. He was forced to accept the rules of nature. The weak fall prey to the strong. Despite his despair, he made a desperate attack at Izuku, trying to deny this one law with all his might. Recipro burst. It was unfortunate, but Izuku's base was already faster than his fastest, so Ida only hit air and was repaid in kind with a quick jab in the back. Snap. It wasn't a serious attack, but it seemed to have serious consequences at the time. Ida was supposed to play a villain in this exercise, but the audience could only see him as a victim. Did I break his back? Izuku was breathing heavily, unsure what next to do. It was then he heard two voices, male and female in unison. DKU! You have it! Just take it already, you good for nothing! X2, though on opposing sides, they shared the same view, for in their eyes, the boy who kept using the word serious wasn't serious at all. Take this seriously. Bakugo attacked him without any regard of their difference in power. Pulling the pin on his grenade-themed gauntlet, he attempted to cover his enemy in a fire blast. Boom! Izuku wasn't paying attention for a second and half his costume was burned away, yet no marks were left on his body. What was he feeling? The quirkless boy didn't know, but he charged at the boy who would blow at any minute. Bakugo tried his best to get away by propelling himself with his explosions, but he wasn't fast enough. Izuku was already behind him, slamming him to the ground and put him in an arm lock. While this was happening, Urikara was about to reach for the objective, but she was repulsed back by Bakugo's remaining gauntlet, in which he pulled the pin with his teeth. Are you looking down on me? Ka-chan, just give up. I don't want to break your arm. Che, even if you break it, I still got another and 2 legs left. Gah. Bakugo's arm was dislocated with absolutely no resistance. I'm serious. No, you're still screwing me round. Bakugo lived to win and would never accept defeat. Only death could stop his pursuit of victory. He was a man who simply did what he wanted, a trait Izuku had admired. A trait Saitama-sensei had also possessed, and a trait Izuku too wished he had. If only he had been more decisive, he wouldn't have had to hurt others like this. He left the disabled Bakugo on the floor and put his hands up in a sign of surrender. From the answer he arrived at, words naturally started forming. I give. But before he could say those words, Bakugo, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, tried to stop him by coming from behind and putting his remaining hand on Izuku's mouth. His pride won't allow himself to take such a worthless win. Don't say it! With a puff of breath that blew the hand away, Izuku no longer had doubts. I give up. With those words, the winners and losers were decided. Villain team wins. The victors of the exercise were injured and would have been beyond saving if not for Recovery Girl, who was part of the school staff. The losers, on the other hand, were barely scratched save for some superficial burns on their costumes. All Might was tempted to call off the match early, but he was conflicted. Their bodies or their spirits, only one thing could be saved, so with that hope he watched on, only to realize that both those things were damaged. It didn't matter who won that day, the only thing that mattered was everyone lost something. The only thing Izuku gained was the scorn of his peers and the meaning behind Saitama-sensei's words back then. Know this, the strongest hero isn't necessarily the strongest man. The farther you get from the people you want to save, the harder it is to save their spirits. I learned that the hard way. Izuku had gained strength in order to become a hero, but it seemed at that moment he was farther away from that goal than before he had started training, and he despaired. It was at that moment All Might appeared, and instead of relief, in an inverse of reality, Midoriya Izuku felt fear. Come with me, young Midoriya, my boy. It's time for your critique. There wasn't much to be said about the match, as the word match implies some semblance of equality, like in a game of Go Fish. Very little about the students could be gleaned off of it, with the exception of Izuku's overwhelming strength. There was also very little the students could glean of it too, and for this reason, even the most motivated and studious of them stayed silent. Despite this, All Might tried his best to give advice through his conjecture. Ida was the best of this match. He was the only one who had some semblance of a plan, even though that plan broke down when Midoriya appeared. It was unfortunate that Ida could not hear such praise from the infirmary at this moment. Midoriya, you were reckless. The only information you had to go on was that the bomb was on the top floor. You were lucky you didn't hit it. Anyone can imagine what would have happened if a real bomb was used. Even when it was in front of you, you hesitated. I can understand you were trying to be considerate, but a hero must be decisive. His next words were directed at Bakugo and Urikara. You two remaining always had your eye on the goal, but that isn't always a good thing. Even though young Ida was injured, neither of you helped him. A hero should strive to save everyone, including the villain. Bakugo gets a pass considering the role he was supposed to play. Being partnered with someone like Izuku, Uraraka was almost a non-factor during the match. All Might couldn't think of anything specific for her at the moment. As he was lost in thought, he had almost forgotten what the rest of the staff had wanted to ask about Izuku. No need to beat around the bush. The number one hero should set an example of decisiveness. Young Midoriya, you put down no quirk on your application. Have you considered changing it? Bakugo tensed up when he heard that. Izuku, on the other hand, had realized that the issue completely passed over his head. Over the past few years, training and helping the occasional passerby were the only things on his mind. It was a wonder how he kept up his studies and got into UA. I was tested to be quirkless when I was 4. It may have been some hidden variation or mutation that appeared. Those were the words that left his mouth, but they were words he couldn't agree with. Those days when his feet were lead, those weeks where he couldn't feel his arms, and those months where he had to endure the summer heat without air conditioning. Thus, it was only natural for him to correct himself. No, I won this power by training with my life on the line and fighting against my own death every day. Those words of the boy in front of him were nostalgic. They were equally comforting and painful as he was reminded of his predecessor. Take pride, Toshinori. You're not like the others who are born with what they have. You worked hard to win your power. All Might had totally forgotten the purpose of his question, and to quell the pressure inside of him, he put on a smile and gave out a hearty laugh. Such dumb zeal. That's exactly what I like to hear. While most of the students scoffed at the scene as hot-blooded nonsense, it had completely won over Kirishima. Though the redhead's signature ability was hardening, his heart was surprisingly soft, and he couldn't help but be moved to tears. He couldn't help but be disgusted with his own first impression of the bald-spotted boy. So my manliness was only on this level. The quirkless boy had become truly strong. It wasn't something Bakugo could deny. There was no cheat behind his cheat-like power. Che. When All Might was finished with his critique, Yurikara was compelled to confront the one who made her feel so irrelevant. I can't forgive you for throwing the match, but I can't accept a victory I didn't earn either, so I'm sorry. She was honestly off-put on some level by how easily the strongest boy bowed and apologized. No, we should apologize to Ida-kun, was her way of changing to topic. I'm sorry for hurting you. Though in the infirmary, Ida was surprisingly lively with his hand flailing about. No, that isn't a reason for me to be angry. Izuku's eyes lit up. Really? If Ida said he wasn't unhappy, it would be lying, and he prided himself in being earnest and honest. He was someone who took things seriously, and it irritated him if others did not. I am angry that you threw the match though, even if you were trying to be merciful. Izuku didn't have the heart to tell Ida that the class had selfishly decided to make him class president without his consent, while his injuries were still being treated. He couldn't tell him that the decision was based entirely on his earnest, bespectacled image. In hindsight, delivering that piece of news would have been the best present if the intent of the visit was cheering Ida up instead of what he actually gifted him with. Banana? Ever since Izuku's training had began, waking up early in the morning, thanks to Saitama-sensei's insistence that they alone were fine for breakfast, bananas had become a staple of his diet before he even knew it. If not for his small stature, the class may have thought his quirk had something to do with gorillas. Some may joke about Tamura's appearance. If he was a hero, people would be compelled to call Captain Facepalm. Whether the countless dismembered hands that covered his body were supposed to be some sort of costume was up to debate. Just like his appearance, Tamura's goal was equal parts ridiculous and terrifying, that goal being to kill the symbol of peace, All Might. For this reason, the League of Villains was created. Taking the hassle to secure UA's teaching curriculum, they had thought they had tracked down All Might, who supposedly worked as a teacher there. They planned to take out All Might during the field trip to the unforeseen simulation joint facility. To their disappointment, All Might wasn't there, but nonetheless they pressed the attack. With Kurogyri's Warp Gate, the armies of societal rejects were able to get past security. With Kurogyri's Warp Gate, they were able to scatter the students. It could be said that among the intruders, the suave black fog named Kurogyri was the only competent one among them. But having just one competent member wasn't enough. Though they were split up, the students gathered their wits and fought back. Though they were young, as hero candidates, they were the elite which were able to overcome UA High's rigorous standards. The mooks which they fought were a ragtag bunch who collectively could not compete with Class 1A, even when split apart. The plan was simple, and it was in that simplicity that it fell apart. It did not take into account the threat of the young fledgling heroes, nor the quirks they possessed. Instead of breaking down the fledgling heroes, the mooks merely rebuilt their confidence after it was ground into the dirt by witnessing Izuku's feats of strength in the previous exercise. This was especially true for Bakugo and Kirishima, who could in some way sate their desire to be the alpha by showing off their masculinity. Though Izuku was faster, Izuku was still the strongest, and in times of desperation, it is vital to have the strongest on the scene to relieve everyone's fears. That was what 13's reasoning for sending Ida for help before being done in by Kurogyri. Though Kurogyri's Warp Gate had an advantage over 13's Black Hole, Kurogyri's position as the most competent intruder could not be understated. It was for this reason Yurikara was finally able to be useful when she was able to throw Kurogyri away into the sky with her zero gravity, buying enough time for Ida to reach the exit and call for help. Despite Kurogyri's obvious competence, he couldn't stop Ida from reaching the exit and calling for help, though in hindsight, it was a wasted effort, since calling for help did not change the outcome in the slightest. It was only inevitable for the class to regroup to where their homeroom teacher was last seen, and when they did, they were treated to a disturbing scene. The homeroom teacher of Class 1A, Aizawa, was bloodied on the floor, being held down by something that could only be called a monster. Though Aizawa had no trouble with the other villains, the thing pinning him down was on a different level. Clad in all black except for the large exposed brain, it was referred to as an artificial human by the invading party, even if it couldn't really be called one by appearance. But considering the quirks that exist in this world, human became somewhat of a meaningless term, Principal Nedzu is a testament to that. It remains a debate among students what animal he's supposed to be. Among the students, a certain boy stepped forward and ran to the place of carnage. It didn't matter if that boy caused them a lot of trouble. It doesn't matter if that boy was a huge wall to overcome. That boy was the strongest among them. Right now, that boy was their best hope. Anyone else would have been a liability. "You can do it, Deku!" Those were the words Yurikara had resolved to say. Words that she gravitated to when she hears his nickname inside her head. Deku. Those were the words Bakugo forced out. He had been forced to accept the difference between him and the former good for nothing. When he tried to intervene earlier today, he had only been a liability to number 13, so he'll wait it out. "Why are you so cool?" were the words on Mineta's mind. Short in stature, he couldn't help feel inferior, especially the way Izuku handled the situation when they were stranded on that boat just moments ago. Despite the inevitable positive thoughts in the heat of the moment, in the back of every student's mind was the same ugly thought. "If you were smarter, you should have just waited for All Might to show off." In the crowd, the son of the number 2 hero, half hot and half cold, was sizing up the number 1 hero in training. "So this is the strongest." In order to surpass his father in All Might, Todoroki would inevitably have to face the boy in the spotlight. The artificial meat puppet, Nomu, was equipped with shock absorption, regeneration, and physical characteristics on par with All Might, the number 1 hero, with sole purpose of killing the latter. The entirety of Tamura's plan hinged entirely on this one being, but that didn't matter, nor did the boy in front of them care. The boy didn't care about what his classmates would think of him stealing the spotlight. In his mind, he had no external enemies. The only thought on his mind was doing what a hero would do. Strong or weak, the enemy of all heroes should be nothing more than the weakness within. He simply had to overcome that. That was what Saitama-sensei had taught him over the years. "One of the greatest heroes I knew was just a guy with a bike who saved cats from trees. That doesn't seem like much. Don't knock it. Sometimes, it's the little things that matter. Even a little thing you do can save someone's world. You saved me after all. Never forget, you're already a hero." He is a hero. It doesn't matter if he doesn't receive recognition. It doesn't matter if he only receives scorn. Being a hero has nothing to do with fortune or fame. A hero doesn't need people calling out their name. Re-acknowledging that one truth and putting a smile on in order to deceive himself, Izuku resolved himself to fight. The obstacle in front of him was an unknown. Testing the waters, he delivers a not-so-special attack. Smash! Unlike his classmates, the obstacle wouldn't go down so simply, and a compulsion overcame him. The meaning behind his smile had shifted. Izuku was compelled to put his left hand over his face, but not in the same way Tamura was. It wasn't a sign of resignation. It was a pose. He was leaning slightly forward, his fingers outstretched and his right arm to his side. He can keep going. If one smash isn't enough, then the prospect of such a punching bag got him a little excited. He would be merciful to prolong that moment. Senju smash. 1,000 clenched fists materialized in an instant. DKU. 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 The flurry of merciful strikes overpowered the rate at which his enemy could recover and was utterly blown away through the ceiling and into the sky before Izuku even finished his combo. It was a demonstration of that cheat-like power that simply smashes through anything and everything. That's it. In the aftermath was a lone figure, soaked in blood, but it was not his own. The figure's small stature belied its true strength. The excitement on his face was completely gone, replaced with the unsettling look of disappointment. The trump card prepared for All Might was simply blown away by some glitch in the system. In front of them, they couldn't see a hero. All they saw was a kid in a gym uniform who was disappointed after breaking his toy. The villains who followed Tamura foolishly broke into the school to destroy the symbol of peace. But they found their symbol of fear, the personification of the world's unfairness. It was no hero in front of them, but a monster. It didn't matter if his costume was being repaired, costume or no costume. Facing Izuku was scary, Ida could attest to that. The monster in front of them defeated their monster after all. The thoughts in Tamura's mind were different from the other villains. He could only look on, unsure what he should have felt at that moment. The scene before him validated the fact that the world was a fragile thing. That unfounded optimism, that false security and arrogant self-righteousness of All Might, he'll reduce it to dust. Whatever the thing which was in front of him was, hearing that declaration of smash, it must have been some follower of All Might, and that was the only reason he needed to turn it into nothing. It's not my fault. While coming to terms with what had happened, a dismembered hand was placed on top of Izuku's head. Tamura's quirk, disintegration, turns whatever he touches with 5 fingers into dust. In other words, he could make even infinity become 0, or that would have been the case if not for Aizawa. Aizawa, also known as Eraserhead, could cancel out any quirk with but a stare. 0 multiplied by 0 was 0, but it was a 0 in Izuku's favor. After regaining his senses, Izuku's eyes were trained on Tamura. After going through Seishiyama's training, as long as Izuku didn't lose focus, he wouldn't lose to anyone. Before he could splatter Tamura over the ground, someone gripped his shoulder from behind. When he turned around, he saw a familiar old Cape Baldy who entered the building through the hole Izuku had recently created in the ceiling. "What are you doing, Saitama-sensei? You're going a little too far a school exercise. Didn't you learn anything last time? Exercise? This isn't." Yes, this was all an elaborate drill. That was the explanation that escaped the bloodied Aizawa's lips as he tried his best standing up. As he was usually ragged-looking, he could easily hide the extent of his injuries. "So you lied again, this was all a drill?" was what almost all of the students exclaimed. Once again, the students felt like they were cheated out of their feelings. As Izuku knew this Saitama-sensei, they falsely believed he was in on the drill. Whatever positive feelings that Izuku's classmates were accumulating for him during this field trip were knocked down a few pegs. That guy taking the spotlight again. Not just strength, but connections too? Once again it was a lie to bring about the best within the students, yet it brought out the worst, even though in both cases, it was the truth. Even though no one was expelled for poor performance during Aizawa's apprehension test, the threat of expulsion was real. In the same way, the threat of villains was real, but the rest of the school staff played along to make reality into fiction. In order to minimize any public outcry about the safety measures at UA, as well as make the infiltrators' efforts all for naught, it was the sensible choice, even if Izuku's popularity took another beating. Without their trump card, the intruders had no choice but to retreat and accept their losses. "You still didn't answer my question, Saitama-sensei?" Before he could react, the green answer covered his face. "Your mother worked really hard on making a new costume after you ruined yours the last time you had a live exercise. Take better care of it next time." "Yes, sir." The clean green costume both cleared his heavy thoughts and his unsightly appearance after the recent encounter. In the principal's office were 2 conversing figures, one non-human and one who wasn't mere human. In order to keep the lie of the attack being a drill alive, Yue offered Saitama a job. Despite the strange feeling that he knew him from somewhere, All Might raised the logical question about this Saitama-sensei. "Do you really think it's a good idea letting a complete stranger in as a teacher?" "That's precisely why we're keeping him close," was the principal's answer. "Hi, I'm Saitama, substitute teacher. The sports festival is coming up. I guess that's all I have to say." Suddenly given a job, Saitama had nothing prepared. In the eyes of students, in a sense, he wasn't all too different from the teacher he's filling in for. Both were not well known and lethargic, though for Aizawa's case, at least his hero name, Eraserhead, was something a few could recognize. Saitama was a complete unknown. "Never heard of you," was Bakugo's reply. For years he passed this Saitama-sensei as a fraud, but now this fraud turned out to be a UA teacher. "I retired, but I guess I'm still a hero as a hobby." The word hobby and hero were the cause of much irritation in Ida that he couldn't avoid interjecting. It was something a lot of the class had thought of. A hobby? A hero can't have such a vague motivation like that. Were Ida's words, but the same words were already buzzing around the minds of many. It was an affront to youthful idealism. "That motivation junk has nothing to do with anything," were the words of someone who was supposed to be molding the minds of the future. To say that without hesitation, so manly, was what Kirishima thought. Every day at school was inspiring. "Well, I didn't want to mention this, but if motivations don't matter, I'm in it for the money." That was what Yurikara was compelled to say. It was an impure goal in her mind, but if Saitama-sensei was right, what did it matter? In the end, Saitama's answer unsettled her. "Skipping on AC is good training, but remember, you should never skip meals, even if it's just a banana in the morning if you want to do well in the sports festival," were words lost on others but the supposed money grubber. Some thought she was out of character, Mineta thought it was PMS. But the truth did no escape the substitute, who knew at a glance they were kindred spirits. He knows my family situation? Do I look poor? Despite his appearance, the substitute was deceptively perceptive. Not just money, I want to be number one, short and simple, was Bakugo's declaration. See, the constipated guy gets it too. What was that ball? Thwack. Before Bakugo could utter another word, he was knocked out of his chair and out cold. Save for one, no one realized what had happened until they noticed the pieces of chalk the substitute teacher was juggling around in one hand. Settle down, oops. Slap slap. Ka-chan, are you alright? Izuku's attempt at repriming the bomb was of no avail. From the audible cracks it was clear that he was defusing instead. Midoriya, you're making it worse, was Mineta's contribution to Bakugo's condition. The next 2 weeks of Saitama-sensei's presence as substitute teacher created a stir, especially for a certain individual who had heard of him over the years. You, sir, are my hero, was what Saitama had said to Lunch Rush. In front of him was the spiciest thing on the menu. For a man who was too strong, he was always seeking a challenge. Lobster fried in chili and wasabi oil. Something so spicy and luxurious that only one was prepared. When he was about to dig in, it was swiped by a speeding missile. When Bakugo turned to look at what he swiped, he found his hands empty. In front of him was the man that made Deku strong, holding the lunch tray as if it never left his hands. Sorry, kid, but if you wanted something spicy, you should have ordered in advance. If you're really worried about me, why haven't you started eating yet? Food is something to be savored. Even youngsters these days should know that. Che. A smile crept onto Bakugo's face and he began his assault. Wanting to try that custom dish wasn't his only reason. Propelled by the explosive force originating from his palms, the heat-seeking missile charged towards the tray of spicy lobster, but he didn't find his mark. This is an eating establishment, was Ida's attempt at defusing the situation, but after an uncontrolled explosion by Bakugo's hand, it seemed he would be visiting the infirmary again. To onlookers, the old man quirk was either teleportation or duplication, but Bakugo knew the truth. Pure speed. The thought only motivated him further. Seconds became minutes, but Bakugo did not stop to eat. He continued forward toward his spicy goal. Ga! Was what Bakugo he uttered after being kneed in the stomach, but it was just the beginning. Bakugo could not dodge such attacks. He could only endure them, one after another, minute after minute. He was getting weaker and slower, his signature explosions devolving into glorified fumes, but he did not stop even after he was kneed the 20th time. His breath was ragged, dehydration was taking its toll, his speed had become nothing and his attacks had lost all semblance of technique, but that did not make a difference. Whether Bakugo was at his peak or in the situation he was in now, the difference between him and the old man did not shrink. He had no chance of winning, but as an aspiring hero he sought out victory regardless. Why had he antagonized this old man? Bakugo could not recall, but with his mind set on something, he did not want to lose. This should be his limit. That was the thought Saitama had minutes ago, but he did not stop. Those minutes simply became tens of minutes, and lunchtime was winding down. The constipated-looking boy in front of him would not stop, and through that determination, his thoughts drifted to his recent disciple. The freckled boy continued to do push-ups, day after day, month after month, but not once did he complain and not once did he stop. His breathing was heavy and he looked absolutely miserable, but he kept up with proper form. The boy was weak, that couldn't be denied, but not once did Saitama think he was pathetic. He would give anyone who thought so a good decking. Though he was weak, the boy already possessed unlimited strength. He had reached his limit months ago, but he continued on. Even though Saitama had undergone the same training ages ago, the boy was a good decade younger than he was when he started training. Could I have done the same at that age? Wait, if I had done it earlier, could I have kept my hair? Putting such strain on his limits for months on end, it was only inevitable for them to break. The boy possessed unlimited strength, and reality was forced to acknowledge that truth. He had gone further beyond. Plus ultra. Even the strongest guys started out as brats. Kids these days, comma. Bakugo's prize was shoved right next to his face, but he shoved it right back. I'm not weak, stronger than anyone. I'll become number one. Strong heroes? Weak heroes? The weakest of heroes are the best at saving people's spirits. After all, It was through his current disciple's weakness that he was saved and was working at this school right now. PFF, spirits? What do they have to do with anything? The boy did not understand a thing, and it wasn't because he was barely conscious. His ideal of strength had little to do with saving others. A hero wins, that's what heroes do, that's all they have to do. Everything. It was complete nonsense to Bakugo's ears, but those words had weight, yet he continued to deny them. He attributed that weight to the old man's overwhelming power. After all, might makes right. That's stupid, was what Bakugo forced out with his remaining breath. Even after the ordeal, the boy who should have passed out long ago was still standing. All Might saw the entire exchange and thought back to what he had discussed with his old teacher, Gran Torino. Yeah, I know of him. That man was already ancient when I was still in diapers and not the type I'm wearing now. If it's him, you have nothing to worry about. It was rare for All Might to see his mentor to speak so highly of others, but this instance was different. It didn't seem like mere praise. Wait, was he the reason your hero costume is white and yellow? Seeing how young Bakugo was handled, All Might became less suspicious of the Cade Baldy, but no less wary. So he modeled his teaching style after his. All Might was no stranger to practical training, but seeing someone else undergo it was no less painful. He could already feel the blood in his mouth, especially the look on the young Bakugo's face when he started eating that spicy lobster. The boy liked spicy food, but the lobster's spiciness was further beyond him. He had yet to break his limits. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining and thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep embracing the power of imagination.